When the rain falls, the bubbles float up and down, and my mother-in-law sings lullabies to my daughter. Every night, as my little girl grows sleepy, my mother-in-law picks her up and sings these very same lines. When it rains, the bubbles float up and down. My mother is remarried. Who will my child stay with? These are the lullabies my mother-in-law sings. There are other lullabies, but she repeats this one over and over. It feels like she's reminding me to stay calm, to live quietly in my husband's house. I sigh deeply, grab the laundry, and head to wash it. Why does my mother-in-law always sing the same song? Have I done something wrong? My name is Mai, and I am 25 years old. I've been married for some time, and I have 2 children, a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. My life seemed to be a picture-perfect family, but it's not quite as happy as it seems. 2 years ago, my husband passed away in a tragic accident. He worked as a construction worker, and one day, while working on the 2nd floor of a building, he fell. Though we rushed him to the hospital, he didn't survive. My world shattered, and I was left to raise our 2 children alone. I was heartbroken. I couldn't stop grieving for months, but life goes on, doesn't it? Slowly, the pain faded, and I had no choice but to get back to work. I found a job at an electronics company. I worked tirelessly, earning enough to support my 2 children. Without my husband, I had to be both the father and mother for them. Fortunately, my parents live nearby and help us a lot. Their support has made life more manageable for me. And the 3 of us, despite the challenges, get by. Each morning, I wake up early to make breakfast, then I send the kids to their grandparents' house so they can take them to school. After work, I pick them up, give them a bath, and prepare their dinner. Even though I often return late from work due to overtime, I take care of everything without complaint. We have a routine, one that brings me some peace. Day by day, things seem to be okay. But life, as it often does, threw another challenge our way. One day, I received a call from my mother-in-law. She told me that starting next month, she would be moving in with me and my children. I was shocked, to say the least. My mother-in-law, named Thoa, is 58 years old. She's been living alone since my father-in-law passed away a few years ago. She had 2 sons, my late husband and my brother-in-law, Tuan. Tuan is 23 years old and still unmarried. Years ago, my husband and I received a plot of land from my mother-in-law. We took out loans from both my parents and my mother-in-law to build our own house. At that time, my mother-in-law lived with her son Tuan. They had plenty of land, but unfortunately, Tuan doesn't like to work. Instead, he spends his time playing and avoids any responsibility. 2 years ago, Tuan got into trouble. He racked up a 900 million Vietnamese dong debt to loan sharks, and they came to our house to intimidate us. My mother-in-law was forced to sell the land to pay off his debt, but even after this, Tuan didn't change. Just this year, he'd run up another 600 million dong debt. With no other choice, my mother-in-law had to sell the remaining land to cover his debts again, and now she has no place to live. So she and Tuan are moving in with us. The land where we live consists of 2 plots, one for the house where we live and another where I grow vegetables. My mother-in-law plans to have Tuan build a house there in the future. For now, though, she and Tuan will stay with us. At first I agreed. After all, the land belongs to my mother-in-law and she has no other place to go. I thought it wouldn't be a big deal since there were still several empty rooms in our house. However, as time passed, things became more complicated than I had expected. Tuan is still irresponsible. He only works a few days a month, barely earning enough to cover his own expenses. My mother-in-law works as a cook at a company, earning 7 to 8 million dong per month, but she often uses her money to pay off Tuan's debts. This leaves her with nothing for herself. Meanwhile, I'm left to shoulder all the living expenses for everyone in the house. The situation became increasingly uncomfortable. I was already looking after my 2 children, but now I had to care for my mother-in-law and Tuan as well. Every day, I wondered how long this arrangement could last. I often found myself thinking, if Tuan continues to waste his time, how long will it take for him to build his own house? How long could my mother-in-law and Tuan stay in our house without causing more tension? It started to feel like there was no space left for me to breathe. One night, I waited until Tuan came home from his late-night hangout. It was already 11 p.m. I asked my mother-in-law, "Mum, can you please call Tuan? It's 11 p.m. already." She sighed and said, "Just let him be, Mai. He's still young, he'll learn someday." But deep down, I couldn't help but wonder, how long could I keep pretending everything was okay? How much longer could I continue carrying this burden alone? In life, we all encounter situations where we have to make difficult decisions, sacrifice for others, and face challenges that seem insurmountable. This story is a powerful reminder of the burdens of responsibility, family expectations, and the complicated dynamics that can arise when others lean on us for support. How far would you go to help a loved one? How do you balance kindness with your own needs? It was late at night. I had just called my son, but he didn't answer. I thought to myself, let him sleep. It's his choice. He's old enough. Then I remembered the conversation I had with my mother-in-law earlier. She had asked me, "When will your younger brother get married?" I smiled and said, "He already has a wife and children. Doesn't that mean he will settle down soon?" She nodded, but there was a trace of doubt in her voice. "Who would want to marry him if he keeps playing around like this?" She sighed. I too had my concerns. My own life had been full of sacrifices and worries, but the real weight of my heart came from my late husband, who I missed dearly. The house felt empty, though I tried my best to keep up with the household chores. On Sundays, when I had a little time to rest, I would do laundry, clean, and tidy up the house. It was a chance to breathe, even though there was always something that needed to be done. One Sunday morning, I sent my 2 children to their grandmother's house so I could catch up on some work. My mother-in-law was out helping prepare food for a family gathering, so only my younger brother-in-law and I were at home. I was sweeping the floor when he came out of his room and asked, "Are you off today, Mai?" I nodded. "Yes, it's Sunday." To my surprise, he handed me a 500,000 Vietnamese dong note and said, "Go buy something nice for the family to eat. It's Sunday, you should treat yourself to something good." I hesitated. It was the first time in months that he had given me money, but I knew he didn't have much to spare. I tried to refuse. "It's okay, I'll manage." But he insisted. "No, take it. Go buy some food. I want us to enjoy a nice meal together." I reluctantly took the money and bought a roast duck, and he bought some beer. When lunchtime came, we sat down to eat. My mother-in-law was still away, and the kids were playing outside. My brother-in-law seemed to... I had finished 5 cans of beer. My brother-in-law, now tipsy, began to speak more freely. "You should drink more, Mai. It's good for you. Come on, let's enjoy ourselves." I was worried as he drank even more. "You're drinking too much. You should stop." But he just laughed. "It's been so long since I've had a chance to relax. I'm just happy today." He looked at me with a smile, and I wondered if something was off. Then he said something that took me completely by surprise. "Mai, I really like you." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Stop it, you're just drunk," I said, my voice trembling, but he was serious. He stared at me intensely and repeated, "I like you." I've been hiding my feelings for a long time. Now that we live in the same house, I feel even closer to you. I know it's wrong because you're my sister-in-law, but I can't deny it anymore. I felt my world spin around me. My hands were shaking as I dropped my chopsticks onto the table. I couldn't understand what was happening. "No, this is wrong. You're my brother-in-law," I protested, trying to back away. He reached for my hand and I pulled away. "You shouldn't say these things. People will think you're crazy," but he insisted. "I know it's wrong, Mai. I know, but I can't help how I feel. I just want to take care of you. I want to be there for you and help you, especially now that you're all alone." My mind was racing. I had lost my husband, and now I was faced with these confusing feelings from someone I had always considered family. "No, stop it," I said, backing away, my voice shaking. "You're like my brother, and this can't happen." But he didn't listen. He grabbed my hands again, this time holding me tight. "Please, just listen to me. I've kept these feelings bottled up for so long, and now I can't pretend anymore." "Let me go," I yelled, but he refused. Then he leaned in and kissed my forehead gently. My heart raced, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "I won't force you, Mai. I'll wait. I'll wait until you're ready to understand." I pulled away sharply, running to my room and locking the door behind me. My heart pounded in my chest and my mind was in chaos. Why did this happen? Why is this happening? I kept asking myself. I couldn't understand why my late husband's brother, someone I trusted, had started to feel this way about me. I felt trapped, terrified of what would happen if others found out. What would they say? What would they think of me? I couldn't bear the thought of being judged, misunderstood, and gossiped about. How could I ever explain this to anyone? The horrifying scene that unfolded made me vow to myself that I would keep my integrity intact. I promised myself that no matter what, I would not be swayed by temptation. My husband's mistake would not shake me. I lay quietly in the room, motionless, until the afternoon. When I saw my mother-in-law returning home, I finally dared to step out. As I walked outside, I saw my uncle, the youngest, cooking in the kitchen. My mother-in-law was peeling apples. When she noticed me, she said, "You look a bit pale, dear. Are you feeling all right?" I nodded weakly, not knowing how to explain the turmoil I was feeling. "Yes, I'm fine, Mum," I replied, forcing a smile. I watched as she continued, "Look at that. Tuan is cooking and cleaning today. Can you believe it? He's actually helping out in the kitchen." I was genuinely surprised. "Really? Tuan? That's unexpected. I didn't know he ever cooked or cleaned before. What happened to him today?" She responded with concern. "Maybe he's not feeling well. His face looks a bit off. Perhaps he should see a doctor," I reassured her. "I think he's just tired. He's been working a lot lately, but I'll be fine. I'm heading over to my mother's house to pick up the kids now." "All right, take care. By the way, I bought some chicken for the kids. I'll make sure they have something good to eat," she said. As I stepped into the kitchen, I noticed my son was stir-frying beef. My mother-in-law muttered softly, "What's going on?" "You're cooking again." I looked at her with confusion. "What do you mean, Mom? I'm just helping out." She was still puzzled. "I've never seen you in the kitchen like this. Could it be that you're finally taking responsibility? Could it be that you've realised the importance of work and discipline?" I sighed. "I know, Mom. I've made mistakes in the past, but I'm committed to changing. I won't play games anymore. I've learned my lesson." She was sceptical. "Are you sure?" "Because you've said this before, but I don't want to hear empty promises. You're not fooling me." "I'm serious, Mom," I insisted. "From now on, I'll work hard and be responsible. Starting tomorrow, I'll take a job at a warehouse. I'll carry boxes and do whatever it takes to make money." Her eyes softened, though she remained doubtful. "A warehouse job? That's tough work, but at least you're trying. I'm glad you're willing to do something." I nodded. "I know it will be hard, but it's a start. I'll make over 300,000 Vietnamese dong a day, and that's enough for now. I'll do whatever it takes to take care of my family, to support my wife and children." "Good," she said. "But about that girl you're seeing, is she serious about you?" I hesitated. "She's a good person, Mum, but I'm not ready to tell you everything yet." "Why not?" "I'm your mother. You can tell me anything. She's not from a wealthy family. She's a good person, though. I don't want to talk about her too much right now." "Is she really that special? You know, I've been worried about you for so long. You've always been out of control, living recklessly. Who would want someone like you?" I felt a pang of hurt, but I didn't let it show. "Mom, I'm different now. I'm changing. You'll see." She was quiet for a moment before continuing. "Well, I just hope she's a good influence on you. Who is she? Tell me more about her. What kind of family does she come from?" "I'll tell you later, okay? Let's just leave it at that for now." I could sense her curiosity, but I didn't want to reveal too much just yet. I didn't want to rush things, and there were still so many uncertainties about the future. Later, when I was at my mother's house to pick up the children, she noticed the strange look on my face. "Mai, what's going on? You don't look well. Are you sick?" I forced a smile and shook my head. "No, Mum, I'm just tired. It's nothing." But she wasn't convinced. "Your face is so pale. Are you sure nothing's wrong? Did something happen?" I took a deep breath and hesitated. "Mum, I've been thinking. What if we moved back here to live with you? Would that be okay?" She was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "You have your own house. Why would you bring the kids here?" I felt a sense of urgency. "I'm just asking. If we need to, we can move back here for a while, but we'll still keep the house. It's ours. It's important for Bin to inherit it one day." She frowned, clearly worried. What are you talking about? You're not bringing your mother-in-law here, are you? No, that's not happening. I won't let her make things harder for you. No, Mom, it's not about that. It's just, I'm worried about Tuan. There's something I'm not sure about. I'll figure it out, though. Are you sure? You've got a lot on your mind, but don't rush into anything. Take your time. I nodded, though in my heart I knew I had to make decisions soon. I couldn't let my fears cloud my judgment. As I drove the kids back home, I couldn't help but reflect. Maybe Tuan had been drinking when he said all those things earlier. Maybe it was just the effects of alcohol, and he didn't mean them. But what if it was something more? I needed to keep my composure. I couldn't allow myself to be overwhelmed by emotions. The truth would reveal itself in time. From the moment Tuan confessed, I had been avoiding him. I felt awkward and unsure about everything. His words, his actions, they were hard to understand. Could I trust him again? Would he change? Or was this just another empty promise? I didn't know, but I had to stay calm and take it one step at a time. The story of Uncle Tuan's unexpected change. Uncle Tuan started showing affection toward me in ways I never expected. He showed concern and care for my family, taking the time to look after my 2 children and even helping them with their studies. It was as if he was stepping into the role of a father figure for them. I didn't know how to feel about all of this. It felt strange. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, I carefully served food to my mother-in-law and then to myself and the kids. My mother-in-law looked at me, clearly surprised, and said, "Lately, Uncle Tuan has been acting differently, don't you think? You're just sitting there, looking confused, and he's acting like a different person." I didn't know how to respond. Uncle Tuan scratched his head and said, "Well, Mum, when I was younger, I used to play around all day, neglecting my duties. But now I work hard, and when I come home, I spend time with the family. I can't help but notice how much things have changed, and it feels like I'm doing the right thing now. I'm finally trying to show that I care, like a responsible adult." My mother-in-law nodded, still looking puzzled. "I never expected you to change like this, but it's a good change, I guess. Who would have thought you'd act like this, now that you have a girlfriend?" At that moment, I nearly choked on my food. It wasn't the first time I had heard rumours about Uncle Tuan having a girlfriend, but hearing it from my mother-in-law made me nervous. I quietly said, "I didn't know he had a girlfriend, but if it makes him happy, then that's fine." After dinner, I tried to avoid talking about it, not sure how to handle the situation. The next few days, Uncle Tuan was everywhere, helping out, doing the laundry, and even washing dishes. He had changed so much that it left me speechless. I never expected him to be this way. One evening, after dinner, my mother-in-law and I were sitting in the living room, enjoying some fruit. It was a quiet, peaceful time, but then she turned to me with a curious look on her face. "Do you know who Uncle Tuan is seeing?" she asked. "I've been wondering, because he's changed a lot lately. It's like he's become a new person. He works hard now, no more staying out all night. It's like he's settled down." I couldn't help but wonder. "I don't know," I replied. "I really don't. It's hard to believe." But deep inside, I was worried. What if Uncle Tuan's affection for me was more than just brotherly love? What if my mother-in-law found out the truth? The consequences would be unthinkable. As I sat there lost in thought, Uncle Tuan suddenly appeared beside me, offering me an apple. I jumped in surprise, almost falling off the chair. My mother-in-law, who had been watching, raised an eyebrow and said, "What's going on? You two are acting so strange lately. One of you is lost in thought all the time, and the other is being unusually considerate. What's really happening?" Uncle Tuan, ever the joker, smiled and said, "What do you think, Mom? If I were to marry Mai, would that be so strange?" I immediately kicked him under the table, signalling him to stop. I didn't want to hear anything about that, especially not in front of my mother-in-law. I nervously picked up the apple and tried to act casual. "Here, eat it. It's delicious," I said, trying to change the subject. Just then, my mother-in-law's phone rang, and she stepped out of the room to answer it. I was left alone with Uncle Tuan. I felt my heart racing, wondering if he was about to say something else. He leaned closer and whispered, "Mai, if we were to get married, do you think your mother-in-law would accept me?" I froze. I was horrified. "Are you out of your mind? Don't talk like that," I hissed. "She'll never approve of this. We just can't." but Uncle Tuan wasn't backing down. "Don't worry. I'll take care of everything. Just say that you love me, and I'll handle the rest." I was overwhelmed. Fear and confusion gripped me. What was happening? Why was he acting this way? I knew I couldn't let my mother-in-law find out, not like this. The idea of it was terrifying. My heart raced with uncertainty. If she ever found out, there was no way I could explain it to her. When my mother-in-law returned from her call, she could sense something was off. She looked at us both and shook her head. "I don't know what's going on with you two, but whatever it is, just be careful. I've seen a lot in my life, but this is new." I sat there, speechless, my mind racing with all sorts of questions. What if Uncle Tuan's feelings for me were more than just familial love? Could he really be serious about us? And if so, how could I ever face my husband and my mother-in-law if the truth came out? Tuan, with his loud and confident voice, kept talking nonsense, making comments that didn't make sense. He wrapped his arms around my waist, which startled me. I quickly spun around to walk away, but I felt like I was trapped, caught in a situation that I never wanted. Why did I keep finding myself in these uncomfortable, unexpected moments? This particular incident was no different. My face collided with his as I turned, and I could feel his breath on my skin. The closeness was overwhelming, his breath warm and a bit too close. I looked up, and there was that smile. He was grinning at me, like I was the one encouraging this. "Oh, so you're being bold today," he said with a laugh, inching closer. He was about to kiss my forehead when I suddenly shoved him away, my forehead crashing into his face, making him jump back. "Ah, you're too much," he gasped, holding his face in surprise. I stood up, brushing myself off, and gave him a stern look. "You need to stop this, Tuan. Stop with these childish games. You're 23 years old. It's time you learned what's right and wrong." "Wait, what?" Tuan stammered, still holding his face. "I'm just showing affection. I care about you. I want to look out for you and the kids." "Care about me?" I retorted, raising an eyebrow. "If you truly cared, you'd understand that this is not the way to show it." "But why is this so wrong? I love you like family," Tuan said, his voice wavering. "I don't want to see you lonely. That's why I've been acting like this." "You're crazy," I snapped. "You're making no sense. I don't need this kind of attention from you." Okay, Tuan muttered, backing off. I know. But when I was offering to take care of you and the kids, I was serious. I swore to your late husband that I'd look out for you both. He agreed. He wanted me to be there for you." The tension in the air was thick, but before I could say anything else, my mother-in-law's voice interrupted from the doorway. I jumped, startled by the sound of her approaching. "What's going on in here?" she asked, pulling me into a tight hug. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" "Mom!" I stammered, feeling the heat rise in my face. I can explain. It's just that Tuan was..." "Oh, no need to explain," she said with a sigh. "I heard enough. You two are still messing around, huh? Playing with each other like this." I froze, thinking she had figured everything out. Did she know about Tuan's advances? Was she going to confront him? But instead, she smiled faintly. "Isn't it true that Tuan has been spending a lot of time with Trang from the Lan house? They're getting pretty close, huh?" I was in shock. "Mum, no. That's just a rumour. Tuan and we've been getting along as usual. He's been helping me with the housework and taking care of the kids. He's been so busy with work, he hasn't even had the time to go out." "Oh," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure? I heard from Mrs. Hoa that Tuan and Trang were seen together just yesterday. It looks like there's something more going on there." "Mom, it's just gossip, nothing more," I quickly replied, trying to calm her down. "There's nothing between us. Don't believe everything you hear. I promise he's just been helping me out." But my mother-in-law wasn't convinced. "Well, it sounds like Tuan's been pretty cosy with her, and I heard that they've been hanging out a lot. If that's true, it wouldn't be such a surprise if he's taken a liking to her." "Mum, no, really. Tuan is just here to support me and the kids. He's like family. Don't misunderstand him." She looked at me with a skeptical expression, but then sighed. All right. I guess I've been a little too curious. But if you say there's nothing going on, I'll believe you." "Thanks, Mum," I said, relieved. "But please, let's not jump to conclusions, okay?" Later that evening, as I was preparing dinner, I couldn't shake off the unease. Tuan had promised my late husband he would help me, and I truly believed he was only trying to keep that promise. Still, his behaviour was making me uncomfortable. He'd been so persistent lately, trying to win my attention with gifts and extra help around the house. I didn't know what to think anymore. As I set the table for dinner, Tuan came into the room holding a small gift in his hand. "Hey, I bought this for you," he said, handing me a gold necklace. "I thought it might look nice on you." I took it from him, but without saying anything, handed it to my mother-in-law. "Mum, can you keep this for now? I don't need it." Tuan's face fell, but he didn't argue. "All right, I understand." Later that night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything that had happened. Was Tuan really just trying to honour his promise to my husband, or was there something more to his actions? He'd been so persistent, buying me gifts and helping out with the kids. And now he was even offering to buy food and other things for the family. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to push him away without causing more tension in the house. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a mix of emotions, grateful for his help, but disturbed by his advances. Was he crossing a line, or was I simply overreacting? I needed to find a way to address this before things got out of hand. I had never spoken to him before, but tonight something felt different. I was restless and wanted him to notice me, to understand that I was not just being dramatic. Yet despite my efforts to push him away, he never gave up. He always seemed to care about me and my children. Tonight, I was lying in my room with the two kids who were at their grandmother's house. I left the door open, thinking they'd come back to sleep with me later. But in the middle of the night, I woke up with a sudden jolt. I felt something heavy on top of me, someone pressing against me, and I could smell the familiar scent. Before I could react, a pair of lips was kissing my neck, sending a chill through my body. I couldn't scream. The moment I opened my mouth to speak, the person kissed me on the lips, passionately and deeply. It was a kiss that left me breathless, caught between pleasure and fear. The warmth of his body enveloped me, and for a moment I felt a sense of peace, like everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew this peace couldn't last. I had to stop it. The room was still dark, but I could tell that Tom was creeping through the window. I could hear my mother-in-law calling from outside the door. "Tuan, why are you still sleeping? The company's off today. Shouldn't you be up already?" I hadn't even realised it was that late. I had been lost in the moment, but I quickly pushed him away and whispered, "Tuan, wake up. They're calling." "Let them call. It's still early," he mumbled, clearly not wanting to move. But my mother-in-law's voice came again, louder this time. "Mai, hurry up. It's getting late, and you still haven't fed the kids breakfast." Huang Nam just nodded. "Yeah, let's go eat." But as we started walking away, he glanced back toward the direction of where she was. "Who is she?" he wondered. "I haven't seen her around before. It's already late afternoon and everyone's gone home. Is she still here?" By this time, everyone else had left. Only the team leader was left, making sure everything was in order. She quickly remembered she had to go pick up her daughter, and in a rush, she handed me the responsibility of checking the goods. "I'll be back soon, don't worry. I'll take care of it after you finish this." I nodded and assured her. "No problem, I'll handle it here. Go ahead and take care of your daughter." She thanked me and hurried off, leaving me alone in the warehouse. I didn't mind at all. I'd been sitting idle for a while, and now I had something to do. I thought, 1 more hour won't make a difference. So I began to inspect the goods. After a while, I finished checking the items, and it was getting dark. As I stepped outside toward the parking lot, I noticed a tall, handsome man standing by the entrance, smiling at me. "Are you okay?" he asked. I froze for a second, trying to figure out who he was. "Oh, you're the repairman here, right?" "Yes," he replied. "I'm Huang Nam. What about you? Still working late?" "Yeah, I had to finish checking some stuff," I said, trying to keep the conversation casual. "But I've never seen you around before. Are you new here?" "Not exactly," he said with a smile. "I've been working here for a while. You might not have noticed me, but I've seen you around." I was caught off guard by his confidence. He wasn't shy at all, unlike the guys I usually met. "Ah, so you're Huang Nam, the repairman. Got it." I quickly realised I had made an embarrassing mistake. I'd been treating him like just another employee. unaware that he was the CEO of the company. How embarrassing. I could feel my face turning red, but I tried to cover it up by laughing awkwardly. "Well, good night then," I said, not knowing what else to say. But as I was about to leave, Huang Nam spoke up. "Are you still not going home yet? The parking lot is empty." "Oh wait, your tyre's flat." I looked down and saw that the rear tyre of my scooter had a puncture. "Oh no, this is terrible," I groaned. "I didn't even notice. I'll have to get it fixed." "Don't worry," Huang Nam said, smiling. "I'll call someone to fix it for you. It's getting late, and you shouldn't be out here alone." I felt a little uncomfortable. "No, really, I'm fine. I can just take a taxi or something," I insisted. "Nonsense," he said with a laugh. "I'm taking you home. Don't worry about it." "But I'm the one who made the mistake today. I can't possibly bother you further," I said, feeling self-conscious. Huang Nam raised an eyebrow and said, "Why do you keep calling me sir? Just call me Huang Nam. We're not that formal." I felt even more awkward. Here I was, acting shy and awkward, not realising he was the CEO. I felt like I wanted to disappear into the ground. "Well, okay then, I'll just go with you," I said, trying to sound confident. As we reached the parking lot, I noticed only 2 vehicles left, my scooter and a luxurious car. Wait a minute, is this his car? I wondered. No way. Could he be the CEO after all? My mind started racing. Did I just make a fool of myself? I mocked the CEO earlier, and now I'm probably going to lose my job tomorrow. I hadn't even finished thinking when Huang Nam appeared again. "You're still here? Haven't left yet?" he asked. I looked up in shock. "Wait, what? You're still here?" "Yeah, I saw your tyre. It's flat," he said, laughing. "I'll take you home. I've already called a repairman to fix your tyre." I was embarrassed, but didn't know how to refuse. "All right," I said, nodding. "Thank you so much." He smiled. "No need to thank me. Let's get something to eat first. You must be hungry, right?" I was speechless. "But you're the CEO, and I'm just an ordinary worker. This is so awkward." "Don't be silly," Huang Nam said. "Come on, let's eat. You've had a rough day. It's on me." We ended up at a fancy restaurant. As soon as we walked in, I knew I was in trouble. Oh no, I thought. This is going to cost me a fortune. I don't even have enough money for this meal. I only had 200,000 Vietnamese dong in my wallet, barely enough to cover a taxi ride, let alone an expensive dinner. But I didn't want to seem rude, especially after all the help Huang Nam had given me. I decided I'd just borrow money from him, and tomorrow I'd pay him back. Sitting at the table, the food was delicious, but the prices made me nervous. I looked at the menu and sighed inwardly. This is going to cost me 2 months' salary. What have I gotten myself into? But Huang Nam didn't seem to mind. He was chatting and laughing, and I tried to join in. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just messed everything up. But at the end of the day, I was just glad he was being kind enough to help me. Why does her face look so sad? Do you know how much the food here costs? How much? It's equivalent to 2 months' salary for me. People like you, who have money, can never understand. Why is she like this? What's going on here? Oh no, I'm just saying. Anyway, I invited you, so go ahead and enjoy your meal. Yeah, she said it nicely. It's still okay, right? Eat, it's delicious here. You'll remember this meal forever. Yes, I'll probably remember it for the rest of my life. Huang Nam looked at me, chuckling, then sat down and ate happily. Meanwhile, I just watched him, my stomach in knots. Here's your bill, please. I took the bill, my eyes scanning it. 15,200,000. Huang Nam looked at me and asked, "What's wrong? Is it cheap?" Cheap? Are you kidding me? This is the equivalent of 2 months' salary. You rich people have no idea. You're killing people with prices like these. Keep your voice down, please. Someone might hear you. Do you know that I just spent my entire paycheck for this meal? What's with your big mouth? I can't explain it to you. You won't understand anyway. I'm full now. Let's go. I don't want to stay here anymore. I don't want to deal with this anymore. He smiled lightly and said, "Lend me some money, will you? I'll pay you back tomorrow." But I don't have any money with me. Neither do I. I only have 200,000 Vietnamese dong on me right now. You've got to be kidding me. So you're telling me I have to pay for the meal? I didn't bring money. What am I supposed to do? I only have 200,000 Vietnamese dong. not enough to cover even half of this meal. You're so rich, but you can't even lend me a little money. My wallet slipped my mind today. What should we do now? There's no way I can pay. Oh, this is ridiculous, I asked the cashier at the counter. Can I pay via bank transfer? Yes, you can. Just give me a moment. Thank goodness for technology these days. All you need is your phone to handle everything. I felt relieved, but still upset about the situation. Huang Nam, still pulling me along, said, "Thanks for letting me borrow the money, but I'm not really giving it to you." I knew that already. Don't worry about it. "I'll pay you back tomorrow," he said. "Well, whenever you have the money, just let me know." I already have the money at home, but I don't want to pay you back today. He was so unreasonable. Fine, I'll pay you back another time. But for now, I'm just not going to do it. He must be crazy. What's wrong with him? Anyway, I'm done talking to him. We chatted all the way back to my house, and when we arrived, I got out of the car and said, "Thanks for everything." "No worries, get some rest," he replied. "Take care, I'll be fine. Drive carefully." I went inside my house and noticed everything had been cleaned up. Tuan was sitting on the floor, folding clothes. Xu Bin was running around. "Sis, you're back! Did you have to work late? Are you tired? I'll make you some tea." "Thanks, but where's Mom?" "She went to visit the neighbours. Go ahead and take a bath. Dinner's almost ready." I went into the bathroom to freshen up. When I came out, I saw a small gift on the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it and see," Tuan said, smiling. Inside the box was a beautiful gold earring. "Wow, it's beautiful." Tuan carefully put the earrings in my ears, then kissed me on the cheek. "I love you, sis." He hesitated, and I could tell he was feeling something. "But I'm scared. I'm scared it's not right." "I'll protect you," Tuan said. Just as Tuan was about to kiss me again, Subin came into the room and saw us. Tuan quickly pulled me into the bathroom, closing the door behind him. We kissed passionately. But was this love? Why did I feel so intoxicated whenever I was with him? It was Sunday, and we had the whole day to ourselves. Tuan was cooking in the kitchen, and Kubin came running excited. "Grandma, I'm going to trade some chicken feathers. I did really well in school. I even got an award for my grades, and when I go to first grade, I'll get another prize." "Good job, baby. Keep it up and you'll make your parents proud." Tuan smiled and looked at me, as though reassuring me. "What are you going to do when you're older?" I asked him. "I'll help take care of you," he replied. "And I'll always be here for you, sis. You and the little one." Subin looked at him and said, "Wait, so is Tuan going to be my dad?" "You should call him Dad," Tuan said. The child seemed confused. "But he's not my real dad." "You can call him that because he'll be the one taking care of you," Tuan replied. We all laughed, but I could feel the tension between us. Later, I found myself thinking about what Kubin had said. Was Tuan really going to be a father figure for both of us? And would this change everything for our little family? I thought about how we'd been together through thick and thin, but today felt different. It felt like everything was shifting. And yet, I wasn't sure what to make of it. Why on earth is this happening? How could something so absurd occur? How is it even possible that Tuan could fall in love with his sister-in-law? Why? It doesn't make sense. I have to find out the truth about this. I can't just ignore it. Have you eaten yet? My mother-in-law took the two children out to play, and Tuan was sitting in the living room offering me a piece of apple. He smiled at me. "Here, have some." I took the apple slice from him and he said, "Sister, I love you." I looked at him, a little surprised. "Thank you. I appreciate you saying that." Tuan's expression grew more serious as he continued. "I swear, I'll take care of you and protect you and your children for the rest of my life." I was speechless. His words hung in the air like an unspoken promise, yet something inside me stirred. I felt confused, torn between guilt and a strange pull towards him. "But what about my brother?" I said, unsure how to respond. "He passed away 3 years ago, and I've been alone all this time. I don't want to hurt anyone." Tuan looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. "I've already spoken with him. He gave me his blessing to care for you and the kids. He told me to protect you, to keep the family safe, to take care of everything. But what about people's judgment? What will they say?" I hesitated. He gently took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. Don't worry. The important thing is that I'll be here for you and the rest we'll deal with it together. Let's not think too much about it. I'm here. I'll take care of you and the children. Trust me. But I couldn't silence the doubts in my mind. What if we were making a terrible mistake? Before I could say anything else, Tuan leaned in and kissed me. The emotions that had been bubbling inside me surged to the surface. In that moment, I knew things would never be the same. Tuan lifted me in his arms, and before I knew it, we were in the bedroom, the door closed behind us. I love you, sister. I really love you, he whispered as we embraced, our clothes discarded on the floor. Suddenly there was a loud knock on the door. Tuan, open the door! We need to talk! My heart skipped a beat. It was my mother-in-law's voice. I froze, panic flooding my chest. Oh no! She's back! Tuan, hide! What do we do? Tuan took my hand, his expression serious. She knows, doesn't she? She knows we've been together. I was shaking, my mind racing. What are we going to do? What do we say to her? Tuan calmly spoke. We have to face her. There's no turning back now. Let's go talk to her, together. We gathered the courage to face the inevitable. I walked out with Tuan, and when my mother-in-law saw us, she was visibly trembling. Her voice cracked with shock. What is this? My son is with his own sister-in-law? What is happening here? Tuan stood tall, looking at her with determination. Yes, Mum. I love her. I want you to support us. Her face turned pale with disbelief. You're out of your mind, Tuan. This is your brother's wife. How could you do this? It's wrong. She was your brother's wife. Tuan replied firmly. But my brother has been gone for 3 years. She's alone. She needs me, and I need her. We're not doing anything wrong. We're just trying to find happiness. My mother-in-law's face contorted with anger. She slapped Tuan hard across the face, her voice trembling with fury. No! I won't allow this! You two need to end this ridiculous love affair now. Mum, please, I pleaded, feeling guilty. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't plan it. It just happened. But my mother-in-law wasn't listening. She turned on me with venom in her eyes. You deceived my son. You seduced him. How could you betray your late husband's memory like this? You're nothing but a seductress. I stood there in silence, tears welling up in my eyes. I knew she was angry, but I also knew she was hurting. I couldn't blame her. Tuan stepped in to defend me. Mum, you're wrong. She didn't seduce me. I am the one who pursued her. It was me. I'm the one who made the choice to be with her. His words seemed to anger my mother-in-law even more. Stop! You've lost your mind. This is disgraceful. This is beyond anything I can accept. She turned away, her hands trembling with fury, and muttered to herself, I raised you better than this. I didn't teach you to disrespect your family like this. The next few days were filled with tension. My mother-in-law refused to speak to me. Every time I tried to approach her, she would turn away or stare at me with disdain. When Tuan was home, she didn't say anything, but I could feel the coldness between us. But when Tuan left for work, she would scold me, telling me to stop this madness. Please, stop this, she begged me one day. If you really care about Tuan, let him go. Let him live a normal life. He's getting caught up in something he shouldn't be. Everything's all right, just a bit complicated, she replied. My mother-in-law is giving me a hard time, so I had to stay with my mum for a while, but I'm glad you came over. Tuan smiled, his face full of affection. Don't worry about her. Just take care of yourself. I'm here for you. I know things haven't been easy for us, but we'll get through it. Why don't we go back to my place? That night, after spending some time together, Tuan took Mai back home. As they arrived, they were both caught off guard. Mai's mother-in-law was sitting in the living room. Mai immediately sensed that something was wrong. Why are you two just coming back now? Her mother-in-law yelled. You're both out there having fun, while I'm stuck at home dealing with everything. How can you behave like this? You should be ashamed. Mai tried to stay calm, but her mother-in-law continued to rant. Do you think it's okay for you to run around with your brother-in-law like this? Do you think we can just ignore that? What will people say? Do you have no shame? Tuan stood up, trying to keep his cool. What do you want me to do, Mum? I'm here to stand by her. If you've got a problem with it, let's talk about it. But I'm not going anywhere. This is my decision. Mai's heart raced, but she stood firm. She had to defend herself now. Mum, this is my house, and I'll live here as I choose. I've earned everything here, including this house. If you want to stay here, you'll need to pay me back the 800 million Vietnamese dong I invested in it. Her mother-in-law's face turned bright red with anger. You dare talk to me like that? You think you can speak to me like this in my own house? Yes, I do, Mai said. This house is mine, and I'm not leaving. If you want to stay here, you need to pay me. Otherwise, you'll have to leave. Her mother-in-law, now visibly furious, stormed off to her room. She had never seen Mai stand up to her like this before, but Mai felt a sense of pride. She had done what she thought was right, and now she had to prepare herself for the consequences. That night, after everything calmed down, Mai turned to Tuan. I can't believe I actually stood up to her. I've never done that before, but I had to. I can't let her control my life anymore. It's time to live for myself. I heard from my parents and then from my grandmother. She went and told the neighbours. Slowly, more and more people in our village started talking, and soon everyone knew. I became the centre of attention. They all whispered about me. My reputation spread quickly, and the gossip was everywhere. People began to say that I was the one who started everything. They blamed me for leading Chu Tuan into temptation. They called me a loose woman, reckless and immoral. I felt ashamed, humiliated. I couldn't even bring myself to go to the market anymore to buy food. I wondered, was this some kind of trap? A punishment for me? Was I really being punished for everything I had done? I felt like I couldn't lift my head, like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. I was paying the price for my actions, and it hurt. My relationship with my mother-in-law became strained. Every day we argued. It was always about me and Tuan. We tried to plead with her, to explain, but she remained firm, refusing to accept that Tuan and I were in love. Things got more serious when she bought pesticides and came to my room, demanding that I distance myself from Tuan. Mai, let's talk for a moment, she said one day. Don't you ever get tired of talking about this? If you want us to stop talking about it, then just end things with that boy Tuan. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why don't you agree to let us be together? I asked her. It would be better for everyone. But she was relentless, glaring at me, her teeth clenched. I will never agree to this, she snapped. I begged her. But we truly love each other. Please, just give us your blessing. You're crazy, she yelled, angry. You don't care what I say, do you? You just want me to accept this? Well, fine. Let me die, and you two can be together. After that, she stormed into her room, and I thought maybe she was just angry and needed to calm down. But then, a few moments later, I smelled the strong odour of pesticide. I rushed into her room, and there she was, lying on the floor with a bottle of pesticide spilled beside her. My heart raced. Mother-in-law, what have you done? I cried out in panic. She opened her eyes weakly and looked at me with pleading eyes. Mai, stop. Please, she whispered. I gave birth to you, to this family. Please stop. Before she could finish, she lost consciousness. No, please don't leave me, I cried out. I tried everything to bring her back. I begged, I cried. Wake up, please, wake up. My father-in-law rushed into the room, and soon she was taken to the hospital. Tuan and I sat outside the emergency room, feeling utterly defeated. We couldn't understand what was happening. Tears fell from both of our eyes. This relationship, this love we shared, seemed like it was doomed. It seemed the only way out was to end it. A week passed and my mother-in-law's health slowly improved. She was released from the hospital and returned home. I, however, made the decision to end things with Tuan for her sake. I wanted her to have peace of mind. We both hoped that our relationship could return to what it had been before, to a place of harmony and understanding. One morning, I woke up early to prepare breakfast. I was getting ready to go to work when my mother-in-law came downstairs and asked, "Are you going to work today, Mai?" "Yes, Mum, I'm going. But please, eat your breakfast first." I turned to Tuan, who was sitting in the living room. "Tuan, I'll be fine. I'll handle it myself. You go ahead and have breakfast." As I was getting ready to leave, he stopped me and said, "Mai, I want to marry you." Will you ask your mother-in-law for her blessing? I was taken aback. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My mother-in-law, who was sitting at the table, dropped her chopsticks in shock. Do you think you can just go ahead and marry her? She asked angrily, her voice rising. What kind of nonsense is this? Tuan, still hopeful, asked, But why? We've talked about it before. Why are you changing your mind now? I looked at him coldly. Because things have changed, Tuan. I don't think we're right for each other. You can barely take care of yourself, let alone me. And besides, I need a man with money, with a future. I don't want someone poor like you. Tuan looked at me in disbelief. I thought you loved me. But I felt nothing anymore. The love I once had for him had faded, leaving only emptiness. My feelings for you were just a passing moment, I said coldly, and now that moment is over. As he stood there, trying to process my words, I slapped him across the face, hard. My mother-in-law was startled by the sound, and I could see the shock in her eyes. I turned to Tuan one last time. Listen, if you ever lay a hand on me again, I'll make sure you regret it. Tuan, furious, stormed out. My mother-in-law, her eyes filled with tears, began crying. Don't be so cruel, she pleaded. Please, don't hurt him. I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. Don't worry, Mum. I promise I'll end things with him. You can rest now. I'll take care of everything. She nodded, and through her tears she said, Thank you, Mai. I'm relieved that you're doing this. I know it hasn't been easy for you, and I'm sorry for everything. I forced a smile, trying to reassure her. But inside, I felt like my world was falling apart. My heart was broken. I had made so many mistakes, and now it was too late. The pain lingered. The love was gone. And now I had to face my future alone. I focused on working, on taking care of my 2 children. I promised myself I would raise them to be strong, independent people. But love was no longer something I wanted. I would never love again. Never. As I was absorbed in my work, the team leader came in, but I barely noticed. I was lost in my thoughts, my heart heavy with regret and the weight of my choices. All right, I'll head up to the director's office tomorrow. The director will be there. Yes, I was actually planning to meet with him as well. As I made my way from the wallet counter to the director's office, I saw Director Huang Nam and Min Koi sitting there. When I walked in, Min Koi moved over to the other side to play games. This left me alone with Director Huang Nam. He offered me a chair and said, Why don't you sit here? Why have you been on leave for almost a month? Are you tired of working? I've been handling some personal matters, I replied. I'll grab you something to drink while we talk. No need. I'm good, I said, handing him the money. I'm here to settle my debt with you. Today's not a good day though, he responded, declining the money. Just keep it. Don't worry about it. As I handed him the money, Min Koi started to laugh from across the room. I couldn't hold back my frustration. What's going on with him? I bring him money and he refuses to accept it. What kind of nonsense is this? I thought to myself. I was beyond irritated. Then I decided to speak up. Director, are you feeling all right? What's wrong with you? Why won't you take the money? Director Huang Nam looked at me, confused. What do you mean, am I feeling all right? I'm fine. What are you talking about? Why are you refusing money to settle a debt? I asked. I haven't been able to come to work because of personal matters, and yet you're calling me to do extra work to pay you back. He looked at me and smiled. Don't worry, we'll figure it out next month. Things will be better by then. Please, take the money. I'm really trying to pay you back, I insisted, now more frustrated than before. Okay, fine. I'll take it, he said reluctantly. I handed him the 15 million Vietnamese dong and added an extra 300,000 Vietnamese dong as a small token. This should cover everything, I said. Min Koi, who had been watching the entire interaction, couldn't help but laugh. Wait, you're only giving him 300,000 Vietnamese dong more? He teased. That's so cheap. Well, 300,000 is still something, I replied, trying to brush it off. It's better than nothing, right? Min Koi smirked. Right, because 300,000 Vietnamese dong can really make a difference. You're not exactly bargaining here. I placed the money in front of Director Huang Nam and stood up ready to head back to work. He called after me, but I didn't look back. As I left, I could hear him sigh. That money, even though it was for a debt, I don't feel happy about it. Min Koi walked over, shaking his head. What's going on with you, Huang Nam? You've got a thing for her, don't you? You're acting like a love-struck fool. Huang Nam sighed deeply. I can't help it. I really like her. What should I do? Min Koi chuckled. Well, if you like her, then you have to make your move. There's no other way. I could hear them chatting as I walked away, but my thoughts were elsewhere. What was going on with Huang Nam? Was he seriously falling for me? The next day, as I was leaving work, I was surprised to see Huang Nam standing outside. Wait, wait, he called. Where's the bouquet? What bouquet? I asked, confused. The flowers I gave you yesterday, he said urgently. You threw them away, didn't you? I paused for a moment. I threw them in the trash. What's the big deal? Why would you do that? Huang Nam said, looking genuinely hurt. That was from the heart. You can't just toss it aside like that, I sighed. I'm not going to keep something I don't want. You don't understand. Why do you think I gave you those flowers? He asked, stepping closer. Because I like you. I've told you this before, and I'm telling you again. I like you. I took a deep breath. But I don't like you, I said bluntly. Now please, just leave me alone. Huang Nam seemed taken aback, but didn't back down. He stepped forward, still holding the bouquet. I'm not letting this go. You don't know how hard it is to admit this, but I care about you. I stared at him for a moment, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I don't want to be with you, I said firmly. Please understand that. I turned to walk away, but then I was stopped by the sound of footsteps behind me. It was Tuan. Mai, he called out, concern in his voice. What's going on? Are you okay? I paused. Tuan had been a good friend, someone I could rely on, but today he seemed different. There was something in his eyes that made me feel uneasy. I'm fine, I said, trying to brush it off. I'm just not in the mood right now. Tuan stepped closer, his tone softer now. Listen, I know you've been through a lot, but don't let him treat you like this. You deserve better. I felt my heart waver. I wanted to agree, but something in my mind stopped me. The promise I made to my mother-in-law echoed in my thoughts. I can't, I said quietly. I made a promise. I can't just forget about it. Tuan's expression darkened. He grabbed my hand. Mai, don't do this. Don't push me away. But before I could respond, Huang Nam was there, grabbing my other arm. Now I was caught between the two of them, Tuan pulling me one way and Huang Nam pulling me the other. It felt like a childish tug of war. I couldn't believe I was in this situation. Finally, in a moment of clarity, I decided to use this chance to cut ties with Tuan. Tuan, let go, I said coldly. I'm going to dinner with my boyfriend. Both men froze, staring at me in shock. Huang Nam was silent, but Tuan's eyes widened. What? He said, disbelief in his voice. Are you serious? I stepped forward and took Huang Nam's hand, holding it firmly. Yes, I said, looking at Tuan. This is my boyfriend, Huang Nam, the one you've been hearing so much about. Who has it? He owns a company car, a big one, bought with money from his family. I can't understand why she loves him. Does she really love him, though? When I said this, Tuan seemed so taken aback, but when he heard the news, he was ready to do anything. He even saw me hug Nam right in front of him. And yet, Tuan didn't believe it. He grabbed my hand and pulled me away. Asking me to come with him? I refused. I'm not going with you. Stay away from me, I said. Mai, don't do this. I beg you, please. Tuan tried to drag me away, but Nam stopped him. Are you deaf? He asked Tuan. She doesn't want to go, so move aside. Tuan, obviously frustrated, tried to argue, but I snapped. You can't even hear what she's saying. Let me repeat it. I am Huang Nam, Mai's boyfriend. Got it? It almost felt like a confrontation was about to happen. I pulled Nam away and said, let's go. No need to argue any further. This is exhausting. Gusiti. As we were about to leave, Nam warned Tuan, stop bothering Mai. This is between us. We drove off, and as I looked through the rearview mirror, I saw Tuan standing there watching us. His face was clouded with sadness, and he just turned and walked away. Once we were far from the scene, I turned to Nam, feeling guilty. I'm sorry for what I said to Tuan. I know I hurt him, but there was no other choice. Nam, trying to reassure me, said, Don't worry about it. I'm here with you. As we approached the restaurant where we'd shared a meal before, I turned to him and said, "You've been there for me. But do you really love me? Why treat him like that? Is that really the best for both of our families?" Nam responded, "You don't understand. Outsiders like you wouldn't get it." Then he added, "But I appreciate everything you've done for me, even if you don't see it." "Can you help me some more?" I asked. "Of course," Nam replied. "I'd help you for a lifetime if I could." But deep inside I could tell he was exhausted. "Do you even realise how much I've been through recently?" he asked, his voice tired. "I do," I answered. "But can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Of course." I hesitated before asking, "Why did you reject him? What's the issue with him?" "I see nothing wrong with him. He's fine, isn't he?" Nam, clearly surprised, looked at me and said, "Tuan is your husband's younger brother, right?" I nodded. "Yes." "He's my brother-in-law. Our love was forbidden. Our families didn't approve. And my mother-in-law even tried to commit suicide because of it. There was no choice but to separate." Nam sighed. "That's truly tragic." We fell silent for a moment. I was still drinking, trying to drown my thoughts. Nam listened patiently, letting me talk. I poured out my pain and frustration about the love I had to leave behind. After a while, it was almost midnight. The restaurant owner, noticing we'd been there for a long time, politely approached us. "It's quite late now. Would you like to settle up?" Nam, feeling uncomfortable, pulled out some money and placed it on the table. "We'll stay until morning," he said. The owner was understanding and let us stay. At 8 a.m, the staff opened the doors and I woke up, groggy, with my head resting on the table. I looked over and was shocked to see Nam sleeping on the couch across from me. I jumped up and called, "Nam! Are you awake?" Nam opened his eyes and with a soft smile he said, "You're awake now? You passed out last night." I looked around and realised we had fallen asleep there. "Why didn't you wake me? I could have gone home," he chuckled. "You were so drunk I didn't want to disturb you." "Did the owner mind us staying?" I asked, still a bit disoriented. "No, he didn't." "Everything's fine. Let's go. Your parents have been calling you non-stop. Why didn't you answer?" "I had my phone on silent. I didn't realise." "Let's go quickly." "Where do you want to go now? Back to your husband's house or to your own family's house?" I hesitated. "I took the kids to my parents' house a few days ago, but I guess I'll go back home now." 1 month passed. Tuan tried again and again to get me back, but I refused every time. I even had Nam pretend to be my boyfriend publicly. I brought him to my family's house for dinner, acting like it was real. Everyone thought we were serious, and my family was happy for me, especially my mother-in-law. She thought I had finally moved on from Tuan. She even started buying gifts for me and saying nice things. But Tuan couldn't accept it. Feeling rejected and helpless, he decided to leave. He started packing his things. His mother asked, "Where are you going, Tuan?" "I'm going to Saigon to work. I'll be fine. You take care of yourself," Tuan replied. "Are you sure? You don't want to stay closer to home, get married and settle down?" his mother asked. "I can't stay here anymore. I'll be back to visit when I can, but for now I need to go." His mother seemed worried. "Are you leaving because of Mai? Is it because I didn't approve of her?" Tuan was silent and then walked out. His mother chased after him, but he was determined. He hailed a motorbike taxi and left, leaving her standing there helpless. As the taxi pulled away, his mother broke down, tears streaming down her face. Her son had chosen to leave and she felt like she had lost him forever. At that moment, she realised that she was all alone. Her daughter-in-law and grandchildren had already left, and her son was gone. All she had left was the empty house and her heart full of sorrow. She was sitting there crying when Mrs. Van, her neighbour, passed by and saw her tears. Mrs. Van immediately approached her and asked, "What's wrong, Mrs. Thoa? Why are you crying?" Mrs. Thoa remained silent, unwilling to answer. Mrs. Van peered inside the house but didn't see anyone. "Where's Tuan? Is he gone too?" she asked. "Has everyone left, leaving you to cry alone in this storm?" Finally, Mrs. Thoa spoke, her voice soft but heavy with sadness. "They're all gone! They told me to stay here alone," she sighed. "Tuan has gone too. He's in Saigon now. He said he might return to visit in a few years, but he's angry with me." Mrs. Van sighed deeply. "I understand. I told you before, didn't I? You should have let the children live freely, like in the West. Let them make their own choices, but no, you forbid everything. And now look what's happened. They left. But it's hard for the family, it makes us lose face. People will laugh at us. Mrs. Thoa shook her head. It's not the same. What if my sister-in-law married her brother-in-law? How could I let that happen? That would ruin everything. Mrs. Van said, Don't worry so much, there are plenty of people like that. You just don't know about them, but you can't keep holding on to old ways, especially when it causes so much pain. The days passed and the storm eventually subsided. A few days later, I took the 2 children back to my mother-in-law's house because I couldn't bear to stay alone anymore. I couldn't eat or sleep, and I was falling ill. I stayed there to care for my mother-in-law and look after the house. When I returned, my mother-in-law cried, "My! Tuan really left. He's gone. I can't believe it." I tried to console her. "Don't cry, Mom. He'll come back. Just wait a little longer. He's just angry with me for now. But it'll pass. He'll return, and everything will be fine." After a while, the pain eased. Though I still missed Tuan deeply, I started to move forward. My heart slowly healed, and I tried to focus on the future. But I also knew that we couldn't just pretend nothing had happened. We couldn't ignore the tension that had built up between us. Meanwhile, Huang Nam was always there for me. He supported me quietly, showing me affection. But even though I appreciated his care, I wasn't ready to start a new relationship. My heart still belonged to Tuan, and I wasn't prepared to let go yet. But Huang Nam didn't give up. He continued to be there for me, visiting us during the weekends. The bond between us grew stronger, and we became close friends. Yet my mother-in-law didn't approve. She forbade him from coming to our house. She even told me that if I allowed him to visit, she would no longer speak to me. One day, my mother-in-law was so upset that she told me, "If you keep this up, you'll end up losing everything. You already lost Tuan, and now you're about to lose me too. You're too stubborn." She wanted me to stay single, raising my children on my own, and I knew it was because she cared for them, but her behaviour was suffocating. At only 25 years old, I was already struggling with so much on my own. Was it too selfish for me to desire a life of happiness and peace? Time went by. Tuan stayed in Saigon, and life became more routine. Every year, when Tet came around, my mother-in-law waited and hoped that Tuan would return, but he never did. He stopped calling, and soon my mother-in-law's health began to deteriorate. She grew weaker from illness and from the pain of missing him. One day, feeling helpless, she asked me to text Tuan and urge him to come home. But I didn't tell her the truth. In reality, I had kept in contact with Tuan all along. We sent letters and gifts back and forth, but I didn't want to worry my mother-in-law, so I lied and told her I couldn't go to Saigon to see him. 4 years later, Tuan finally returned. He was successful in his work and had saved enough to start a life in Saigon. He told me he wanted to stay there permanently and had even bought land to build a house. When we reunited, I hugged him tightly, both of us overwhelmed with emotion. "I've missed you so much," I said. Tuan smiled and said, "I've missed you too. I couldn't forget you. When I'm ready, I'll come back. But for now, I want to be here, starting a new life." I looked at him, and my heart filled with relief. "I understand. I've waited for you, and now it's time for us to build a new future together. But let's not keep this from Mum any longer." That evening, we told my mother-in-law the truth. At first, she was shocked, but then she sighed and said, "I knew something was going on between you two. I heard you crying together in the kitchen. I've been waiting for this day. I can't stop you. I've been too stubborn." Her heart softened, and she agreed. "If you're both happy, then I'll accept it. I don't want to stand in the way of your happiness anymore. But you two should come to Saigon to start fresh. It'll be better for everyone." With her blessing, Tuan and I took our children to Saigon, where we began a new chapter of our lives away from the past. Over time, my mother-in-law also adjusted to the idea and came to live with us in Saigon. We lived happily, free from the past shadows, and after a few more years, we felt at peace. Finally, we could breathe, knowing that we had made the right decision. Lessons learned. 1. Forgiveness is key. Sometimes we need to let go of anger to find peace, just as my mother-in-law learned to forgive us and accept our love. 2. Love cannot be controlled. true love is not something we can dictate or restrict. It must be allowed to grow freely. 3. It's never too late to change. Even when we make mistakes or hold on to old beliefs, it's never too late to change and grow toward happiness. In the end, we all found a way to move forward, and our family became stronger, not despite the struggles, but because of them.